In the mid-1800s, France was a bit of a mess. Okay, maybe a bit more than a bit of a mess. The upper classes thrived with power and food, while the middle and working classes starved. Throughout this time, for one of the first times in history, newspapers were being mass-produced so that the lower classes had access to ideas from other places for the first time. Now, this project is all about the idea of nationalism. But what does that even mean? Nationalism is, according to the Oxford Dictionary, identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. In this video, I will go into French nationalism in the 1800s and how newspapers impacted it. My first question was, how did the written word impact French nationalism in this period? To answer this, we'll need to get a bit of background info. Specifically, in the year 1848, France had another mini-revolution, the February Revolution. This caused a domino effect. As Metternich, an Austrian chancellor, said, "When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches a cold." Then, the majority of the other countries in Europe had their own nationalist revolutions. You can learn more about these on my classmates' learner portfolios on this website. There will be information on Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, to name a few. So, the telegraph was used to spread this information, another example of the written word being used. So, throughout this time period, many papers were being produced and different people read different ones. For the first time, papers were cheap so everyone could see them. This meant poor people could share their ideas, but the government could also spread more of their ideas. The government also had a lot of control over what was published, and the censorship was a hot topic at this time. By 1914, there were more than 80 daily newspapers. Next, let's take a look at when the written word was used the most to spread nationalist ideas. So, censorship was kind of all over the place at this time. In the 1840s, supplies were cheap, and with the 1848 revolutions, a lot of short-term political papers shot up. This ended in 1851 under the Second Empire of Napoleon II. In the 1860s, censorship relaxed, but not that much, and in 1881, a press law let go of all restrictive practices. Which leads me to my next question. Who created all these newspapers that were spreading all these ideas and creating all this change? The short answer is a lot of people. Let's take a look at a couple of them. This is Émile Girardin. He created the penny paper La Presse, which was the first paper to have advertisements in it, which made it cheap. He was known for flamboyant and short sentences. He was also in Parliament, which made him a very conservative writer. An even more conservative paper was run by this guy, Alfred Edward. It was founded in 1884 after the mass revolutions. It was called Le Matin. The literacy percentage was at about 86.9% at this period, so most people could read, but they were also poor and didn't have the money to afford the expensive papers that were the only ones available at the beginning of the 1800s. It was also pricey to produce these papers, with a 5% tax on anything political. Only the rich could produce their ideas to the masses, and by the masses, I mean the other rich people. This all changed in the 1840s, however, when a printer was made that made it much cheaper to produce papers. But why did people continue to meet up, write, and riot after it was banned? We'll look at this in part 2, link in the description.